A true warrior is not somebody who performs well. It's somebody who has mastery over themselves. It is somebody who realizes that the real battle is within, that the real struggle is within, and to address that it's not what happens in the world around us. It is how we respond to that.
Hello and welcome to Real Men Feel. I'm your host, Andy Grant. Today we're diving into the heart of service, strength, and self-care with a man who knows all three inside and out. Robbie Nebergall is a veteran firefighter, fitness coach, martial artist, and founder of Reclaim, a lifestyle-based program helping firefighters transform their health and reclaim their lives. Robbie has seen firsthand how the job can grind you down and what it takes to build yourself back up. We talk about smashing the stigma around mental health, bringing change to a culture that is harming men, and what it means for firefighters to thrive in retirement, because not enough are making it there. And hey, if you're looking for a space to get real and connect with others doing the inner work, join my free community, Authentic AF, at realmenfeel.org/group. Let's do it. Hello, Robbie, and welcome to Real Men Feel.
Hey, thanks for having me, man.
So, Robbie, did you always want to be a firefighter?
You know, honestly, I didn't, but I did have an uncle who was in the fire service, and for a long time, he was encouraging me to maybe look into it. It wasn't until later on that I actually kind of took that seriously. I went down a lot of different roads before I arrived at being a firefighter, but every job that I've had up to this point did have the common theme of, like, in some way, shape, or form, being of service. So that was the common denominator, and then eventually I started listening to him.
And did your experiences match any of the hype that your uncle laid out for you?
It's kind of like with anything, right? Like, the grass is always greener. What you expect something to be, it's not usually as glamorous as you imagine. There are some things that I will take with me for life that have been overwhelmingly positive, and then just like anything else, like any other job, the stuff that you do go through, the stuff that weighs on you, and the stuff that you never would have known to expect unless you did it is what plays into the equation there. So yeah, and I imagine it's like that with any job. We just think, oh, it's going to be so amazing, and then, like, of course, it comes with the territory. There are these things that you don't expect, and that can be detrimental.
And you've been in fire service for 25 years, is that right?
I have not been in the fire service for 25 years. That's usually the extent that most firefighters go to. So a normal career in the fire service is usually 20 to 25 years, and then they go to retirement, right? A lot of firefighters either work for a pension or something like that. Now, there's some variance in there, but 20 to 25 is the normal. I've been in the fire service for 4 years, personally.
Looking at some of those people with the 20-year plus career, what sort of toll do you see this job take on them physically and mentally?
I mean, that's a loaded question, man. And the toll physically and mentally can be drastically different depending on how that person takes care of themselves in the course of that 20 or 25 years. But the job on its own, you could probably do everything perfectly, and you're still going to have some years off of your life in the process. That being said, you can lean into some of those things even more if you don't have the appropriate coping mechanisms, you don't have the appropriate routines, you don't have the structure in place to protect yourself. The cost of making it to your retirement, if you even make it at all, and that is a statement that should be taken with gravity. Like, there's a lot of firefighters that don't even make it to their retirement. You want to talk about the toll. It's often their life if they lean into some of these negative habits that we have around, like, coping with what we see, what we deal with, the sleep deprivation, the chronic stress, the fatigue. So physically and mentally, the rate of suicide among firefighters is much higher than in the general population. In fact, I can say, personally, in just the 4 years I've been in the fire service, there have been 3 suicides in neighboring departments since I started. Those are the ones that are actually because not every time it happens is it made public or made known that was the case. Those are just the ones where people were transparent about it, where departments were transparent about it. The physical and mental toll, if you don't take care of yourself, this job will take everything from you if you allow it to.
Was there a particular moment that you decided you wanted to do something, kind of change this culture?
There were two situations, right, that compounded. One started before it was very shortly before I started at my fire department. We actually had a captain at my fire department who passed away of cardiac arrest in the middle of the night. And the crew that I currently serve on, they were the ones that found him. That person would have been my captain had this situation not occurred. And the truth is, it was like one of those things. It's something that people don't see coming. It's one of those things that compound over years, because you wouldn't look at this guy and think like, oh, he's terribly out of shape. Oh, he's all this. You know, from all accounts and from what my crew has told me and what I've watched in them over the years as that situation has affected them, right? They went out to catch, you know, they got a call in the middle of the night and they were waiting for him to come out into the trucks. And he didn't come out, so they went to go check on him. And the captain's dorm at this department is the only one that is separated from the rest of the crew. So a couple minutes had gone by, and then when they went in there, they found him face down on the ground next to his bunk. He had passed of a cardiac arrest. And if you know anything about firefighters, we're also paramedics at my department. They had to do CPR on him as well, right? Which it's different when it's somebody that you know. And I can only imagine, because like I sit at the table with these guys every morning. You know, you drink coffee, you get to know their families, you get to know their stories. You spend 24 hours of time, you see them more than your family. So watching that unfold shortly after I had arrived at this department, combined with that uncle that I told you about, he passed away 6 months into his retirement. And he was the kind of guy that he loved this job so much. He went from being what's called a battalion chief, went and retired from his department, and then went and started over at a new department, working on an ambulance again. He didn't do like a lateral transfer. He went like very to the bottom rung, worked on an ambulance. That's the kind of guy he was. And he did it with a smile on his face. I never heard complaint out of him. And 6 months in, you know, again, both of these stories, widowed wives, teenage children left behind, and fire departments that will never be the same again. So you ask, what were the things that started some of this? It's the recognition that one, those things happened, but two, that they were not unique to me or my fire department, that these happen every day. I feel like we get notified on an email from like the International Association of Firefighters every day that we have a line of duty death. I get them every other day. Every other day I get a notification about a firefighter that died from either cancer or cardiac arrest. What's worse is that we've normalized it. It's become so normal and so desensitized. And one day I caught myself looking at my phone and I saw another email and I went, oh, there goes another one. And I went, wait a minute. That cannot be my response to this. There's a human life on the other end of that headline. I can't be so desensitized. This is so frequent that it's such a problem that nobody even talks about it anymore. It just comes with the job. It's just part of the job. That doesn't sit well with me. And what I'm really trying to do is change that story for firefighters and change that story for the fire service so that it's not normal anymore.
So when you talk about the fire service being dangerous and the toll being your life, you don't just mean the dangers on the job. It's not all these men are dying on calls.
No. The danger is the slow burn and the creep over time. It's the compounding stress mentally, physically, and emotionally. Very, very, very few firefighter deaths and firefighter injuries even come from unavoidable fireground operations. Like somebody fell through a roof or fell through fell into the basement, had to be saved, it happens, don't get me wrong. Those things happen. It's just a very small percentage. Overwhelmingly, the number one cause of line of duty deaths is cardiac arrest, usually on the fire ground. So somebody be inside fighting the fire, sudden cardiac arrest. Stress, obesity, over 50% of firefighters are either overweight or obese. And that plays a large role into the comorbidities that happen in these situations. And so the real danger isn't the fire ground, it's the fire culture. It's the culture we have around food. It's the culture we have around supporting each other. So you also have to take this dogmatic group of people, and we have pride in what we do. But sometimes it manifests, and when somebody's in trouble, the support isn't always there. And the attitude is, you're supposed to be gritty and salty and resilient, so suck it up and shut up. Yeah. And so what happens is the real danger is us, to our own habits, our own brothers and sisters, the people that we show up with every day. And those habits, when you compound and zoom out over the course of decades, right? These things, and you compound it with chronic sleep deprivation, fatigue, stress, family life, juggling everything else. You combine that with poor dietary habits, poor physical fitness habits. You compound that with no resources for your mental health. I don't think we have to stretch too far to understand why the average firefighter makes it 6 years into their retirement before dying. That's the average. 6 years into a retirement after 25 years of service, average amount of time that a firefighter stays alive.
What do you think is the biggest roadblock to changing this culture, to decreasing the stigma around admitting something's wrong and supporting each other?
I think it's going to happen slowly, and I think it's going to take enough people talking about it and realizing it. But what we have to understand is that in the fire service, things are very slow to change. There's a saying among firefighters that's kind of widely accepted. Firefighters hate two things. They hate change, and they hate the way that things are. And when it comes to new technology, new ideas, new mentalities, the fire service is generally behind in adopted. They're on the late end of that bell curve in whatever area, like technology. I'll give you an example. The SCBA stands for self-contained breathing apparatus. It's the air pack that we wear, arguably the most life-saving piece of equipment that we wear that enables us to go into highly toxic environments and do the job that we need to do. Those have been around since the 70s. They were not widely mandated until the late 90s, early 2000s. The most life-saving piece of it. We're talking like there's no argument that this is just the like, without a doubt, will save you years of your life if you were to implement it. 30 years is what it took for the most important piece of equipment that we use. 25, 30 years. So you take a group of people that are extremely resistant to change and very, very steeped in tradition. That's probably the biggest part, is like the steeping in tradition. And that pride that translates to, this is a part of our culture, and our culture is unique and it's special. And if you do anything to change any of that, it's not just an attack on that piece. What we feel is that it's an attack on all parts of the culture. So being able to separate it out and say, hey, how can we keep what's good? But to answer your question, whoever talks about this stuff, whether it's me or somebody else in the fire service advocating for these things, they themselves have to be resilient, because the backlash that whether I've personally received at my own fire department or online, or just for talking about differences, like those people, they have to stay strong and they have to stay together. I've made it a really big point to make connections with other people in this space, share camaraderie amongst ourselves, and to do it together. Because at the end of the day, I think if we can combine into a movement of firefighters who are working towards these things, it goes back to the old saying that if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, then go together.
Boy, it stuns and saddens me that men can be so attached to tradition, even when that tradition is killing them.
Yeah. And it's, I mean, that's the stake, but it's hard to think of it in those terms because you have to be able to zoom out and look at the long term and look at like what's happening from a big, like from the top of the mountain. What is happening? What do I see? All we know right now, a lot of firefighters, like life is so hard. The only thing that they can even be bothered to think about is how do I get through the next shift? How do I get through, the next overtime? How do I get to the end of the next day and survive? And so some would even take the stake like, yeah, I got into this knowing that it would end my life early, but that's how much the tradition is worth to me. And that is where I will draw the line and say no. Like I don't believe there's no value in tradition, but I better understand what the purpose is. If the sake of keeping a tradition is for the sake of tradition itself, then we might need to evaluate that. If there's a purpose and a value and it brings people together and there's some kind of reason that actually like translates to a positive benefit to the crew or the people practicing that tradition, then okay, great. But times change. And the fire service isn't unique enough that we are impervious to the passing of time and the world as it changes. And we pride ourselves on being masters of adaptation. We pride ourselves on the ability to improvise, adapt, and overcome very quickly, unless it comes to changing the culture or changing our own personal habits.
Well, so I certainly see the need and all of your experiences that went into creating your program, Reclaim. So tell me a bit about that.
Reclaim is a program that has been designed for firefighters that are struggling and need help with solving some of the habits that we have around health and fitness that the job make very difficult. And the reason there are other firefighter programs, many, if not all of them, lean into burnout more than anything. And I don't see as a solution to the longevity that we need inside of this career. Something you can actually do with consistency over the course of 20 or 25 years. Something that doesn't consume your life. Something that doesn't take the attitude that the only things you should do with your time is work out and show up on shift. Because I have to believe that if you're going to do this career for 20 or 25 years, that you should have the opportunity to enjoy it too. It shouldn't just be gritting your teeth the entire time. There has to be more to life than just those two things that make life worth living. And that's usually the trade-off that firefighters feel like they have to make. It's like, I can either spend time with my kids or my family, or I can go to the gym. And 9 times out of 10, probably more, they're going to choose the other option. That has more value. But my point is that what if you could do both? What if the fitness industry is wrong? What if this idea that you have to work out 6-7 times a week, eat 6 meals a day, which is unrealistic for the lifestyle of a firefighter who's already burnt out by the job, what if you could significantly reduce that and see better results than you ever have before? What if you could maintain your health by having a smart structure rather than just adding more volume and more burnout? So this program, it's for the firefighter that wants to realize that the real flex is being able to keep up with their kids or their grandkids, to not have the job rob them of all the life and longevity, to not retire broken, to have a space where they can feel and operate and perform to their absolute best and not have to sacrifice all the other things in the meantime.
Now, you talked about the importance of community earlier. Does community play a part in Reclaim as well?
It does. And that's exactly the reason that I have chosen to host Reclaim on a community-based platform, to keep everybody motivated together, working towards the same things with the same values, And it goes back to that statement, like, we are stronger together. So we bring all of the firefighters who are on board with this message into one space to communicate, to connect, to learn together, and to benefit from each other's growth, to talk about their own journeys and what has worked for them, what hasn't worked for them, into a communal space. And the connections that I've seen grow just from that have been amazing. Whether it's like the firefighters with their coaches or whether it's the firefighters with each other.
So there's definitely a strong warrior culture in all emergency services. What can be done to redefine that warrior mindset to include wellness and emotional strength and acknowledging struggles?
I think we have to redefine, maybe not you and me, but like as a culture in the fire service or first responders in general. People think that being a warrior is physical performance. But we need to redefine what that is. A true warrior is not somebody who performs well. It's somebody who has mastery over themselves. It is somebody who realizes that the real battle is within, that the real struggle is within. And to address that point, that it's not what happens in the world around us. It is how we respond to that. It is the degree of self-mastery that we have over our thoughts, our emotions, our actions, our behaviors. And because we have been called to a higher level of service, it demands, and the people that we serve, they deserve to have people with that level of dedication showing up to help them when they need it most. So to be a real warrior is much more of an internal battle. The true self-mastery isn't about the chaos of the world. It is about the chaos of your world internally and how you can move through the ebb and flow of that, how you can still learn to respond well. I've said this to the clients that I've worked with. I said, if I could boil down everything in this program into one sentence, I would say it's learning how to respond well. Because what we are is first responders. We're not first reactors. A reaction is spontaneous. It's without thought. It happens like a chemical reaction. Two molecules collide and guaranteed outcome. A first responder, they decide. They decide how they're going to show up. It's looking at the world and saying, you don't get to decide who I'm going to be today. That's the path of the warrior. It's surviving a storm in a rowboat, which the only way you can do that, you keep the water out of the boat. Storm can be rolling around you, it doesn't matter. You keep the water out of the boat, you'll stay afloat.
When we first spoke, you mentioned that there were leaders in the fire service that say things like, if anyone has a problem in the job, they shouldn't be in this job. And that if they use peer support services, they were seen as weaklings. Are you seeing younger generations of firefighters be more open to their own health and emotional well-being?
I do see more acceptance in the younger generations coming in. There is, like in any other culture or community, there's going to be generational discrepancies, and yes, there is people who say that, you know, if you have a problem, then there's the door, right? Or even attempt to disband some of the peer support or peer fitness teams. That's their goal. And generationally, and like what I wish could be imparted on them is that most of the time when people have that attitude, they have it up until a certain point. It usually changes, but then it's too late. I think with the information age that we live in, the information that's at our fingertips with ChatGPT and all the other resources that are out there, there's a little bit more of an educated population coming in. More open, have seen the results. And maybe some of the people that have some of these mentalities are people in their family or people that they've witnessed. And they're probably taking up the mentality that I don't want to be like that, or I've seen the results of this firsthand. So it's my perception that with time this is improving, or at least that the baseline coming in isn't so drastically low. Now, the problem is that they might come in with those beliefs. The fire service, being steeped in tradition, it's like you start on the very end of the totem pole. So the people making the decisions, the people with these attitudes, are generally more so in positions of authority. And you can lead from the bottom just like you can lead from the top. But when it's coming down from the top, it really, really slows down your tailwind.
Yeah. If you could wave a magic wand and change one thing in Firehouse culture, what would that be?
If I could change one thing, it would be having continuing fitness standards for firefighters. And the reason I chose that specifically is because it will and does have implications on like the mental state, the physical awareness, the emotional well-being. It's not the only piece of the equation, but it has a positive benefit. But one of the things that is a big sticking point for me, and in fact, I get in a lot of trouble for saying this online. I get in a lot of hot water for this. But I've been very clear and very vocal that I believe there should be continuing fitness standards. So like what is the problem when I say that? For anybody that's listening and maybe doesn't understand fire culture, there's a test to get hired. Generally, it's called the CPAT. Now, federally speaking, after you get hired for the next 25 years, there are no physical requirements to keep your job. None. So when I say I would like to see continuing physical standards, and by the way, before I move on, some departments take it upon themselves to implement their own, but they don't have to. And that's the other thing. Like, the best firefighters I've ever worked with held themselves to a much higher standard than their department ever held them to, or their cities or their jurisdictions ever held them to. And so those departments exist, but there's only about 30%. Nationwide, 30% have any kind of continuing standard. And that standard, since it's not like federally defined, can be whatever they want it to be. And they can pencil whip, and they do so like within that 30%, like how much is actually adequate and how much is actually standardized. So to just have a culture where this is taken seriously and that it's important and that it's a piece of the equation, as seriously as we take fireground operations, as seriously as we take everything else that we do on the job. If I could change one thing, it would just be the idea and the level of priority that physical fitness is put in the fire service itself, to a degree where it's actually something that you are expected to perform, graded on, and evaluated.
And ideally, what does a healthy retirement for someone coming out of the fire service look like?
Best case scenario would be coming out of the fire service with your relationships intact, family, friends. This is one of the things you see in the fire service. People like retreat into the culture so much so that like they stop being able to identify with anybody outside of the fire service. Rate of divorce is very high. The best case scenario is coming out with the mental and emotional capacities to still have maintained your relationships with the people that you care about most, and to retire without a body that has been broken and worn down by injury and misuse, to actually live through 30 or 40 years after your retirement, to be able to get down on the ground and play with your kids or your grandkids, to be able to go on that hike even at the age of 55, 65, 70, rather than be stuck in place, immobile in a body that's full of pain. Just a healthy, resilient person with their relationships intact.
Robbie, what's one thing you wish that more men knew?
I wish that more men knew that emotional resilience, mental strength does not equate and is not synonymous with weakness or softness. We go back to being this topic of a warrior. Having control over yourself, having self-mastery, means having understanding. It means that instead of bottling it away because it's quote unquote weak, look it in the eye, acknowledge it for what it is, and then take control of it. More men need to understand that emotional resilience comes from first struggling with those emotions, which you won't have an opportunity to do if you push it down, then getting familiar, getting comfortable with those, and then still responding well. If you want to be a leader, if you want to be a caretaker, a provider, that means having that emotional maturity that comes from the experience of acknowledging and working through those emotions and those mental states. More men need to realize that it's okay to feel. It's not okay to act however you want. But that's the whole point, right? Is that you decide. You decide that where that line is between who's the person I'm going to be today. And I'm the only one that gets to decide that.
So, Robbie, I want to thank you for your work as a firefighter and your work in trying to save firefighters from themselves, from this distorted tradition that's ending lives prematurely. So, Robbie, what's the best way that people can get in touch with you and learn more about the program Reclaim?
Yes, there's a couple different ways. I'll make it simple. The best way would be on Instagram. My handle is at ROBBIENEBS. Very simple. Robbie Nebs. You can find me there. I'm the Firefighter fitness coach. From there, you can also find links to book consultation calls or find my free school community that I do have for firefighters as well, to give them like the baseline knowledge to help get on top of some of these things that we discussed today. You can also find me on YouTube. I do my own podcast revolving around firefighter fitness topics. That's Reclaim Fitness Group on YouTube.
Robbie, thanks again for sharing your experience, your time with us. And yeah, I hope you reach a lot more guys. This is important, and really appreciate giving us a peek inside this culture, which I did not realize was still such a strangling culture for men. That was Robbie Nebergall with a powerful reminder that being strong isn't about hiding pain, it's about confronting it. Whether you're a first responder or just someone looking to reclaim your health, purpose, and peace, Robbie's message hits home. And remember, you don't have to do this work alone. Join us in the Authentic AF community at realmenfeel.org/group. Until next time, be good to yourself.